I am Britt Burner, and as Liz said, I'm going to be discussing Medicare and Medicaid. As a disclaimer, I'm actually going to start today, and most of today's time is going to be spent explaining what Medicare pays for, and then Robin's going to be able to follow that up with then the interplay between where Medicare stops and where Medicaid begins. So a lot of today's content is going to be actually what Medicare is covering. And then we'll follow up with the rest of that on Thursday. And if you don't already know, if you're not able to tune in on Thursday, we are posting these on our website after the fact, within a few days of having the live event. So you can always catch up if there's something that you're missing. So importantly, what is Medicare? Medicare is health insurance. So is Medicaid, but they cover different things for different people. Medicare traditionally is for those who are over 65 years old and receiving Social Security retirement benefits. It's also a health insurance plan for those individuals who are on Social Security disability and receive income payments through Social Security disability because they have been deemed disabled. And those persons get Medicare as their health insurance after a 24-month wait period. So once you're deemed disabled, there's a 24-month wait time, and then you are enrolled in Medicare as your health insurance. There are also certain exceptions for those with certain diagnoses. Those are exceptions. There are exceptions that apply for people who don't have to wait the 24 months after being deemed disabled through Social Security, such as if you have ALS. And there's also Medicare is available for those who have end-stage renal failure, and there are other exceptions. So that's important to know. But really what we're talking about is those retirees who've turned 65 and either they start accepting their retirement benefits or they just they sign up for Medicare when they turn 65 if they've chosen to delay taking their benefits. What does it include? So you may have heard letters, right? All these things always have letters. Part A, B, C, D. What does it cover? What is it? So Part A is your hospitalization. It is something that you get auto-enrolled into when you have Social Security retirement benefits. There is no premium for Part A. So you're not paying for this. This is a benefit that you are entitled to as a retiree who's paid in enough quarters to receive the retirement benefits through Social Security. If you don't have enough quarters, so you're not entitled by nature to this, you can actually buy in, and there is a cost based on how many quarters you don't have. And what I'm referring to are the quarters of the year in which you've paid into Social Security that is what in the end determines your Social Security payments and whether or not you are entitled. This Part A is, I'm going to share my screen right now because I'm going to show you some numbers, and it's easier to see certainly than it is to just jot down what I've said. So this is benefit information for Social Security, and I'm going to see if I can zoom in because I think I can. Okay, so what we're talking about is this section here. So if you're an inpatient in the hospital, for your first 60 days, Medicare pays everything but $1,408 per benefit period. Then days 61 through 90, Medicare pays all but $352 a day. 91 through 150, all but $704 a day. And beyond 150 days, there is no payment. So what this is that after day 150, or I'm sorry, before day 150, after day 90, you're in your 60 lifetime reserve days. So you won't have those in every hospitalization period. Then after day 150, there is no Medicare coverage for the hospital. This also Part A is covering for hospice care. Hospice care means that you're terminally ill as determined by a doctor who has certified that you have less than 6 months to live. This is palliative, not curative care. So for example, if you have a diagnosis of cancer and you're still actively fighting the cancer, Medicare is not going to pay for you to actively fight the cancer and get that hospice palliative care for comfort for end of life. There is no cost associated with this hospice care. But I always have people say to me, well, this doesn't make sense because I know somebody who's been on hospice for a year. How could that be? If they have to be deemed terminally ill, less than 6 months to live, how can they be on hospice for so long? Now, obviously, when a doctor makes that diagnosis or prognosis of less than 6 months, this is just their best guess based on patients they've seen in the past and their medical opinion. So there are some people who are continually recertified for that hospice care because they outlive the 6 month stretch. That doesn't mean that the doctor doesn't think it's still going to be less than 6 more months before they pass. And that's why you hear of some people who are on hospice care for longer than those 6 months. So that is what Part A is covering. Then we have Part B. Part B is for your doctors, your physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, medical equipment, supplies, home health aid for a limited period, and preventative care, among other things. I just want to touch upon the home health aid situation. So what's the difference between a home health aid through Medicare and a home health aid through Medicaid? And the difference is that this is part of your rehabilitation when you have Medicare Part B home health aid services. This is not for an unlimited duration, and it is not for 24 hours a day. This is typically what you'll see people are receiving when they're released from a hospital to home or a rehab facility to home, and they're reintegrating back into the community, and they have some home care services from Medicare that is helping them do so, and it's very limited. Typically, when we see clients coming out of a rehab facility, we tell them to expect no more than 4 hours a day, no more than 5 days a week, for no more than 4 weeks. And that's generally what we're seeing, and obviously this is based on authorizations and the individual need of the client, but that is what I'm talking about when I refer to Part B Medicare home care, home health aid services. Now, unlike Part A, Part B has a premium. The premium is dependent upon your income. Most of our clients have Social Security and maybe some other income, but they're going to be paying $144.60 a month. See, there's a question here. Someone's asked if someone signs up at 63, are they eligible even though they're not 65? No, you're only eligible once you turn 65 years old. And you can actually apply 3 months before your 65th birthday and for 4 months after that. That's the enrollment period, and you have to enroll in that time period. So like I said, the standard that we see is $144.60 a day, but some people are going to be paying more based on the fact that they have a higher income, and that's how they'll know what they have to pay. There is a $198 annual deductible for Medicare, so that's out of pocket at the beginning of the year. And then generally speaking, and I'm sure you've heard people talk about this, there's the 20% copay. Now for some things there are specific copays, but generally speaking, the patient responsibility minus any other insurances, which we're going to talk about, is 20%. So Medicare is paying for 80, you're paying for 20. So you, as I said, you would enroll from 3 months before your 65th birthday, and that enrollment period lasts for 7 months. We generally advise clients you want to get ahead of this. You want to get your paperwork in so that you don't have to worry about what's going to happen when you turn 65. The insurance will be in place. There is a 10% penalty for each year that you don't enroll. So you want to make sure that you are enrolling in benefits. Now, you are exempt from enrolling in Medicare if you have an employer still who is paying for your insurance. So if you're still working and you have what they call creditable coverage, so this is coverage that's going to cover anything that Medicare would be covering, then you don't have to enroll in that time period at the age of 65. And then there's a special enrollment period that lasts for 7 months after your retirement. Now, if you are enrolled in creditable coverage and you have this other coverage and you want to also have Medicare, Medicare is going to be your secondary insurance. Now, I'm going to point out that that's different than if you are a retiree who maybe receives retiree health insurance through your prior employer, and this could be through a union, in which case Medicare will be the primary and that retiree health insurance is the secondary. So if you're still working, your employer coverage is going to be primary. If you're not still working, it's going to drop down to secondary, and then Medicare is going to be first. Someone just asked what happens if you're covered under your wife's insurance, and so that would be considered this creditable coverage that we're discussing. So for Medicare Part B, it's covering those rehab benefits. So what does that mean? So let's take somebody who goes into the hospital and they're admitted to the hospital, and then they need to go from hospital to a rehab facility. Medicare will cover the cost of that rehab facility, and I'll talk about exactly how they cover it. But the important thing to know is that there's something called observation status. So if you are in the hospital and you go to the ER and you're just on observation status, you're not actually admitted as a patient to the hospital. Now, they may still have given you a little area and that your gurney is in, and they may be testing you and they may be doing other things. But in the end, for insurance purposes, you are not an admitted patient of that hospital. You are only on observation status. Then you are not entitled to the subsequent rehabilitation benefits under Medicare Part B. So it's very important to know when you are in a hospital, what status do you have as far as the hospital is concerned? You want to be an admitted patient if your goal is to go to rehab after that hospital admission. So for the admitted patient, it has to be, it's what they call a 2 midnight rule. So you have to be in the hospital for 2 midnights, so 3 days basically. And once you are there for that amount of time as an admitted patient, then you can have this subsequent rehab stay that's partially covered by Medicare Part B. They have to tell you at the hospital within 24 hours if you're on observation status. So it's important that you or your advocate be aware of what your status is, but there also is someone from the hospital to make sure that you're being properly informed of what your status is. Then if you are on an admitted patient and you are released from that facility after you've had this, what we call qualifying stay, then you can go to a rehab facility. Days 1 through 20 in that rehab are going to be fully covered by your Medicare Part B. Days 21 through 100 will have a copay. Now, this is not the traditional 80-20 copay. This is actually a set copay. So no matter what facility you're in, there is a 160, you know what, I think my number, I have 164.50 a day. I just want to make sure that my number is correct on that in terms of what the copay is. So, you know what, it's 176 a day. The numbers have changed a bit. So the copay is that daily amount for days 21 through 100. Now, the important thing here is to realize that you don't always get 100 days of rehabilitation. You have to actually be participating in rehabilitation, and you have to be in a position where the rehabilitation is having a benefit. Robin on Thursday is going to go into the standard in which we determine what that means and how to determine how many days somebody should get and what you do if you believe you or the person you're advocating for is not getting their full amount of benefit. But technically, you can have up to 100 days unless it is cut off before that. Now, that large copay really adds up if you have 80 days at that level, and that's where people start to have other kinds of insurance that is going to cover the copay. That's when we get into what we call Medigap or supplemental Medicare. And then some people also talk about Part C, and I'm going to talk about Part C, which is Medicare Advantage plans. It's often called that in a second. So the Medicare Advantage plans are the oh, you know what? I think we actually have a question. So if I'm still working past 65 and covered by work insurance, do I have to do anything at all as far as Medicare? So no, you don't have to, as long as you have that creditable coverage. And as long as you have that creditable coverage, you don't have to worry. And then you have 7 months after you retire that you can then enroll in Medicare. So Part C, the Medicare Advantage plan. So this is someone who doesn't have A and B. They've chosen to have this Medicare Advantage plan. So many people do this. I've heard a lot of insurance brokers tell me that their younger clients, healthier clients, so someone who's 65 and doesn't really go to the doctor very often and doesn't have a lot of health issues, often don't want to pay out of the out-of-pocket costs for the Part B plus the supplemental, because if the Part B is the $144.60 a month, plus you're paying for a supplemental health insurance, which for many people is around $300 a month, that's a large price. So for many of these people, if they're not seeing a lot of doctors and they don't have a lot of healthcare costs, they may choose to enroll right off the bat in a Medicare Advantage plan. Just like when you're choosing health insurance at any other point in your life, you're going to want to take a look at what that plan offers, because every plan is going to be a little different in terms of what medications it covers, even what pharmacy is a preferred pharmacy where you might get a lesser rate. And then you're going to want to make sure that you're choosing the plan that's right for you. Also, is it a plan that the doctors that you regularly visit are contracted with? So you really want to make sure that you're choosing the right plan for yourself. And there are people who it's their job to sell these types of plans and to help you make that decision. A lot of people, again, choose it because it's less expensive. One thing I didn't point out when you have Parts A and B and a supplement is that you also have to get a Part D plan, and that's for drug coverage. Now, a lot of people say, I don't even have a Part D. I don't even have drugs, so I don't need any Part D plan right now. But it is important that you enroll in that Part D plan right off the bat, because there is a late enrollment penalty, and that penalty gets compounded the longer you wait to enroll. So you really want to make sure that you are enrolling in a Part D plan. So again, that's going to be another cost though. So you're paying for the Part B, you're paying for the supplement, and you're paying for the Part D. And that's the reason why a lot of people choose the Medicare Advantage plans, especially if they are not in such need of a lot of health needs, a lot of doctor's appointments, a lot of pharmaceutical needs, et cetera. The Medicare Advantage plan is also going to cover vision, hearing, dental most of the time, and those are things that your other Medicare is not going to cover. So a lot of people, again, really like the Medicare Advantage plans for those reasons. Now, I want to go back to talking about if you do have to go into that rehab facility, like I talked about with the copay. Different Medicare Advantage plans have different positions on whether or not they pay any or all of the copay. So if you have a Medigap supplement that is of a certain level, your copay for that rehab facility is going to be covered by that Medigap, that supplemental health insurance. If you have a Medicare Advantage plan, you have to check with what your plan offers. I had one client where, just as always, 1 through 20 were covered. Days 1 through 20 were covered. Days 21 through, I believe it was 60, were not covered. So they had to pay the copay for those days. And then days 60 to 80 were covered. And then it wasn't covered again. And we've seen different things. So you really want to know what your plan is offering, because that obviously can be a very big cost. And I really want to stress the importance of checking those formularies for the drugs that you might be taking, for the doctors that you might be seeing, to make sure that if you are choosing a Medicare Advantage plan or a Medicare supplement, that you are choosing one that's going to cover the things that you need it to cover. And we have some people who, don't realize that you pick one plan and that might not be the right plan for you for the rest of your life. And so when there's an open enrollment period, you're really going to want to look at it and make sure there haven't been changes in the past year or changes you anticipate coming to what your needs are going to be, to make sure that you have the right plan. I see some questions here. Liz, do you want to go through and let's answer a few more?
Sure. We've got a question here. Under Medicare Part C, can you choose the doctors?
So you can choose the doctors as long as they are part of the plan. So the answer is yes, but you want to make sure that your doctors are part of that plan and participate in that plan.
Thank you. If I choose a Medicare Advantage plan, can I later switch to a supplemental plan?
Yes, you can. So that's what I was just referring to right at the end of that last bit, which is that I would recommend that you look at it annually and make sure that it is still what you need and what you anticipate needing for the coming year, because there are certain enrollment periods in order to be involved in a plan in the coming year.
How much does Part D usually go for?
The Part D it varies based on what plan you pick and your income, but it's usually, for most of our clients, it's certainly less than $100. I think I've seen them as low as maybe $40, but I'm not an expert on that. I would say you have to check with the different plans or with a person who is a broker in these insurance plans and really knows a lot more about the ins and outs and the details.
Does a diagnosis of Alzheimer's qualify for Social Security disability?
So when I talked about the ALS exception for the 24 months hold for getting the Medicare, which is I think what you're referring to, Alzheimer's is not part of that. Somebody can get Social Security disability with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's if they meet the criteria for Social Security disability. But so it's not an automatic, but it is something that you could get Social Security disability if you otherwise are entitled to it based on that.
Thank you. It is my understanding that if you are still working, Medicare wants you to sign up for hospitalization only. Otherwise, there is a potential penalty later on. Can you confirm? Yeah, so that's the Part A. So you're going to have the Part A. It's the Part B that is the part that I was referring to with the creditable coverage with if you're still working. And someone asked if the Medicare benefits amount chart is available on your website. It's not on our website, but if you send an email, Liz, I think if an email is sent to you, we can provide that. If you register for Part B 3 months prior to your 65th birthday, does your Medicare coverage begin when you register or when you turn 65? When you turn 65. So I don't have anything additional to discuss today. This is, again, a primer to get us going for Thursday when Robin's going to explain the interplay between the Medicare and the Medicaid and what each is covering when you are covered with both. One thing I really want to point out is that most of our clients are very concerned that if they do go on Medicaid for long-term care, for home care and nursing home care, they are concerned that they are going to lose their Medicare and lose their doctors, and that is not the case. Well, thank you, everyone. And I hope that you all have a great day, and I will see you soon.